Welcome back to another new year. This is Unapologetically Strong with Eric King. How are you guys doing today? Woo! This is, what is it, January 24th? This is my first day back inside of the studio. So welcome to Unapologetically Strong. And just like we did last time, we're going to have some fun today. And we got two special guests. And I know, and I've already told them that I will mess it up. So we're going to go ahead and just break it out. So I would like to introduce first Michelle Epps from the Art Therapy Studio. So as you know, some of you guys, I am a therapist, but I don't play therapy on the radio. But I like to bring in my friends and my families to come in and talk. So first, we're going to bring in Michelle. How you doing?
Hi, Eric. Thanks for having us.
All right. Then we're going to bring in Cheryl Pete. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. You have a wonderful mic, just so that you know. Your mic is wonderful. Go ahead and talk. Let me hear you say something.
Well, that's good.
So I would like to welcome you guys into the Unapologetically Strong moment. So you guys are from the Art Therapy Studio. Now, who wants to be the first to tell something a little bit about the Art Therapy Studio? Now, I'm going to go ahead and help you guys out a little bit because every now and again, sometimes people forget that there is, some of the things that are going on. But I do know that the Art Therapy Studio was founded or started in 1967. The reason why I know that is not only because it's up on the website, but I was also at one point a board member way back when. I think it was roughly, 5-6 years ago. And now I'm also a part of, or was welcome back, but we're not going to talk about me. We're going to actually talk about you guys. So first up, so we have the executive director. So we're going to start with Michelle. How did you end up in the Art Therapy Studio?
It's kind of a complicated story because I'm actually an arts administrator and I have a certificate in nonprofit business management from CASE. So art therapy is not my background.
Okay.
I started working as the community engagement coordinator at Spaces, which is located on the west side of Cleveland. Mm-hmm. And I was doing a lot of arts communication or community work. I was going to the juvenile detention center. I was going to places that had kids that were kind of in transition between foster home and the juvenile detention center.
Gotcha.
Along with other community centers. And I found that what the coordinators there were wanting was something I couldn't provide because I'm not an art therapist. And I recognized that the care they needed was deeper than what I could provide.
Gotcha.
They understood that the practice of making art was really therapeutic for the students and the kids, but they thought I could go deeper than I could. They wanted me to address trauma and certain things. And I'm like, this is way above what I can do. And I recognized that really early.
My pay grade.
Yeah. and ultimately, I didn't want to do any more damage than some of these kids had already been experiencing. And so I looked around, I did some research, and I found Art Therapy Studio. And I started referring out to Art Therapy Studio and said, I can still do the art education for you. But, my partners, I was saying, you really need to reach out to Art Therapy Studio because they're going to provide something for you that I can't. Okay. And so that's where it started from. And when there was a position open, the outgoing executive director reached out to me and said, she thought I would be great for the position because I kind of became an advocate for Art Therapy Studio because I saw the value in providing art in this therapeutic, system and the good that it could do. I mean, it was just incredible to see us kind of working in tandem at certain sites. And YWCA comes to mind. We were working with the some of the individuals there that came out of foster care and were homeless and are at their residency place there. And just seeing like the difference of working in tandem of how it can impact people's lives. So that was really cool.
I like to hear that. And then we also have, clinical director Cheryl Pete. And you are actually a art therapist.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, I've always come back to art in my career. So I've tried lots of different things throughout my life. And before I became an art therapist, I worked for 10 years in advertising. I worked at a billboard company.
Get out of here.
Yeah. And so it was just it was a temp job that turned into a long-term job. I was the media manager there. So I managed the design team that designed the billboards and the team that actually installed the billboards.
Wait, did anybody else know that there was a billboard company? Like, seriously?
Yeah. There's quite a few, actually. I worked for a small family-run billboard company in Mansfield.
Okay.
But there's several larger ones. Clear Channel has one.
So all the major players.
Yeah, there's larger like corporate, like across the whole country. And then Ohio has a lot of small billboard companies.
I can definitely see it's cool, a person that's in art using the billboard, especially with the digital stuff now.
Yeah.
And using the digital boards. That's kind of cool. Okay. So one of the things that I love to do during this first segment, welcome back, Eric, is to talk about strength. So the name of the radio show is Unapologetically Strong. And the idea is to tap into our community strength, tap into some of the things that make us as humans move forward and grow. So what I would like to first, I always ask this first, and anybody can jump in, right? First thing I always like to ask my guests is, how do you find your strength?
That's a great question.
Who wants to go first?
Well, I would say,
okay,
for me, I think my family has a lot to do with it.
Uh-huh.
Relying on the emotional support.
Yeah.
I've got a relatively big family. There's 4 kids, and I've got 2 nieces and my parents. So I rely on them a lot to kind of ground me.
Yeah.
And if I'm getting a little too full of myself, they kind of remind me like where you came from.
Like, yo, you got to calm it down.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Like that degree doesn't mean anything. Like
Right.
just I am your father or I'm your mom, and
That's wild. Our family just want to just keep us there. I'm just kidding. But so what you're saying is where your strength is from family.
Yeah, family, and I think the community I built around me, like my friends. I've got the same friends I've had since I was in 4th grade.
Got you.
And,
oh wow.
Yeah, they're all over the country, and we just keep in contact with each other. And
okay.
Yeah.
What's the farthest?
Hawaii right now.
I'm being nosy.
Actually, no, she's in Japan now. She's her husband's in the military.
Oh,
so
okay.
They've been stationed in Japan actually during COVID. So
get all of the free fly.
Yeah.
you go everywhere. Okay. So 4th grade. Are you from here?
I am. I'm from. I used to live over by the airport. So like the not West Park. I guess it is West Park area.
Over there.
Yeah.
Now, what school? What high school did you graduate?
So I actually went to Elyria First Baptist Christian School.
Okay.
And
that's far west.
Yeah, it is. But my dad, he was really adamant about that because he grew up in the Cleveland public school system, and he had a really bad experience. So they scrimped and saved to send me and my older sister to that school that was far away. I guess he just didn't want us to have any negative influences. And,
we call that not trying to pass on trauma. That's what we're trying to.
Yes, definitely. He's got some horror stories in his childhood. So I definitely
Okay, all right, it's your turn. You got it. So you're second.
Ready.
So you got that means your answer is going to be amazing.
I actually have a story.
Okay, go ahead.
So there are a lot of different things that I could say, and the cliche is art, but I'm going to tell you a story about clothing.
Okay. Okay.
So people that know me well know I like to wear a lot of very long skirts. I have one on today, and they're kind of, eclectic and colorful. And somewhere along the line, I figured out that whenever I wear these longer skirts, I feel strong.
Oh, nice.
Like there's something about putting on one of these skirts that is very empowering for me, and I feel most like myself when I'm wearing this kind of clothing.
Love it. Okay.
And I have a friend and a mentor who's Native American, and one day we were talking about skirts and dresses, and she was sharing that in her culture, the belief is that when women wear long skirts, it actually connects them to Mother Earth, and that then we can draw strength from the mother and be stronger. And it was such an interesting moment for me because I just connected to that idea and thought, oh, that's what it is.
Yeah. The other thing is to go with the clothing is it's the number one way to allow yourself to express. So when we're talking about art, art, in my opinion, is not just simply what you put on the canvas, but also what you wear as a canvas.
Yes.
And so, one of the things that I like to encourage people is to allow yourself to be expressive, allow yourself to show, your strength in all, different types of ways. So I really enjoy that. So when we're looking at this concept of strength, we all get weak sometimes. And so by being in the therapeutic environment, when it's time for you to stop pouring into other people, how do you allow yourself to be poured into? Oh, another one.
That's a difficult one for me.
Okay.
I kind of internalize everything. I don't really share.
Gotcha.
In my family, I feel like I have a lot of responsibility to be the strong one.
Oh, gotcha.
And so for me, it's difficult. And Cheryl and I have talked about this. I probably, as a person who encourages other people to go to therapy, I probably should do it myself.
Okay.
And I've just never felt like I was ready.
Yeah.
But I do struggle with that, trying to make time to, pour into myself and care for myself in a mental health way. It's it's definitely a challenge for me.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously you're the executive director, which means that you have a lot of weight on you.
Mm-hmm.
So you have and it's not an executive director of a widget company. It's the executive director of a health company, a mental health company. And we'll get into like the different types of clients or different types of customers. Some people call it something different that you actually service, but it's not easy. If you were a widget maker and you were, that's different. But, the concept of, carrying other people's weight is something that definitely in your role is dual. And so I can definitely understand that. So what about you, Cheryl?
Well, I think it takes a lot of practice, and sort of my approach is holding space for people. Mm-hmm. And we were just talking the other day about sort of like our personal identities versus our professional identities, and how there's not being two different people. It's just turning on and off different parts of your personality.
Exactly.
And for me, I think the key has been a lot of my own mental health work that I've done over the years so that I can separate the two. And it's about stepping away from my own stuff and just being really present with people. And just for me, I really visualize like holding space. And I think a lot of therapists struggle with silence. And in art therapy, there's a lot of silence because you can have a session where the client doesn't say anything for them.
Nobody talks.
And it's very tempting, especially first getting into the profession, to want to fill that silence.
Because it is hard. I mean, you guys know I'm a therapist. And one of the first things that I had to learn, and also I tried to mentor other people in learning, is shut up.
Yeah. Yep.
Stop talking. Now, at home, I'm constantly talking. I guarantee my kids be like, Dad, shut up. But anyway, so last question before we go to break. And I do want to know, when you are having those moments, what allows you to get excited? So I'm on this kick, right? It's not what makes you happy, it's what makes you excited. And so a lot of times, especially in our industry, it's like, oh, we're going to follow what's happy. And you lose people right off back. So it's really find out or figure out what makes you excited and move towards that. So when you are having those heavy moments with the work, because Cheryl, you're also the clinical director, which is not easy.
No.
Right? It's not easy. So I really want to know, before we got about 2 minutes. I really want to know before we get on this break is what gets you excited to help, flower, that strength. Who wants to go? Cheryl, you get to go first.
All right. So I think for me, finding connection is very exciting for me. And I find that especially at the office, when I get most excited at work is like a little moment where somebody says something and someone else goes, oh yeah, me too. And then you just start this organic conversation. And it might be something as simple as tea, right? Like, I love tea. I love tea too. What's your favorite kind of tea? Oh,
Together.
me too. It's connecting with other people.
Cool. Okay. What you got?
I think for me, it's acknowledging people's talent and the work that they put, the hard work they put into their art pieces, and acknowledging that for them and talking through it and seeing how they develop over time. To me, that is really gratifying. I think that as a person who's done a lot of community art, seeing that as a non-therapist, it's always been exciting, but seeing it in a therapeutic context, it's really incredible. I mean, we've had some pretty amazing situations arise where you've seen really marked growth. And that energizes me to keep doing what I'm doing. Yeah. And then just to see people beaming when they're explaining their artwork and what it means to them. It's just, it's an incredible feeling. Like they're kind of opening, a window into like, I don't want to say soul because that's kind of cheesy, but like a window into like their personal experiences and something that you wouldn't be able to do by just talking to them.
Yeah. So we could be cheesy. It's okay. It's cheesy.
I like cheese.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and take a quick break. And on the other side of the break, we're gonna really get into the art therapy studios. And so when we get into the art therapy studios, I really want you to allow, the audience to actually know you explain a lot of stuff, because I know the only reason why I know about art therapy studios is because I was a board member. Right. I didn't know it existed, but I now understand the beauty of art. And so a lot of times, people think about art, they don't necessarily think it from a different level of expression, rather than just sitting across from somebody and asking questions or listening to answers or stuff like that. Anyway, this is WOVU 95.9 FM. We're going to go ahead and take a break, and I'll see you on the other side. Welcome back to Unapologetically Strong on WOVU 95.9 FM. So we have some dignitaries from the Art Therapy Studio. We have Executive Director Michelle Epps, and we have Clinical Director Cheryl Pete. So we were talking on the other side about this concept of funds, money. So like I said, I have a soapbox, and I have absolutely no problem standing on that soapbox. And I truly believe in order for us to be extraordinary, as we should be in the mental health field, we need to be treated with the same type of respect as doctors, dentists, take your pick, psychiatrists, everyone that is also is in the medical field, because we're our medical individuals as well. So we need to make sure that we are. And so my soapbox is ensuring that individuals, one, who've paid $30, $50, $60,000 to be in this profession, get compensated in this profession. Now, I think in the state of Ohio, and you guys can correct me, I haven't read much about it, things are changing with art therapy and how it's going to be compensated. So let's go backwards a little bit. So in order for me as a licensed professional clinical counselor, that's who I am, in order for me to take insurance, I have to get this thing called credential. And what that basically says is I have to get contracted with Medical Mutual, Cigna, all that other stuff. So in order for me to do that and accept insurances and get what's called reimbursement, that means the insurance is going to pay me for my service to where individuals are not self-pay. I have to go through a process. But I have to go through that process based off of what governing body, I should say, says that I'm worthy to have. And just up until recently, and I think this year, you can correct me, is that now art therapists, which has a different type of acronyms afterwards, have the ability to get credential and also possibly get reimbursement from insurance. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Actually, you're in luck, because I also happen to be the legislative chair of the Buckeye Art Therapy Association. Okay. So the past few years, I've been deeply involved in this process. Good. We have been fighting as a profession for over 40 years to be licensed in the state of Ohio. Right. And this year it passed. Okay. You are correct that now the state will issue us licenses. It is the first step in reimbursement. Right. So the current bill that passed is not going to allow for reimbursement yet. Oh, I don't like that. I don't either. But we had to do this before. No, I understand. We had to have the Baby so so now we have to go through the process of getting the insurers to reimburse for our services, which is the next adventure in this journey. But we're in the process right now. The board, the Counselor Social Worker Marriage Family Therapist Board, which is a mouthful. Oh, huge. Yes. Luckily, for everyone that has to say it, they're not adding art and music therapists to it, because that would be even longer. But we will be licensed. Art and music therapists will be licensed under that board starting this year. Yeah. And the beauty of it is that, Michelle, with you on the business side, you get the opportunity to actually spread your wings on a new talent. So looking at it from the business side, you are going to be the individual going through the process of trying to get the credentialing and things of that nature. How excited are you about this process? I'm excited and a little scared. It's slightly terrifying. If y'all could have seen, I asked the question. I knew I asked the other question. I wasn't going to ask the question you thought I was going to ask.
How excited are you? But I'm sorry, go ahead.
It is exciting because it does mean that we have the potential to serve more
Yes.
people,
Yes.
which is always what we're in the business to do.
Exactly.
But the scary thing about it is it's so new. We don't know what hurdles or what preparation we need to do to make that happen. So we do know it's going to change things. We're going to have to probably have somebody that does medical billing and coding as part of our team. We're probably going to have to, talk to the insurance board and make sure that, art therapy is covered and what that entails. So I'm assuming it's going to be like a similar, and a similar advocacy type thing of trying to convince them to support art therapy, as a standalone, not as in concert with something else. So it does, the uncertainty, I think, is what scares me, is because I don't know where to start. And I'm, as Cheryl can attest to, a over planner. So the fact that I can't get started and have a jump start on things is killing me.
Not yet.
And you're on our speed dial, right? Like we will be calling you because we're going to need your help.
I was definitely not going to do that. But what I was going to say is that at least you have an archetype to work within.
Yeah.
Because individuals who are licensed social workers, so we have what, 3 different other iterations. We have first licensed social workers, right? LSWs. Then we have PCs, LPCs. Then we have MFTs, which are licensed. So LMFTs. So you have an archetype. I mean, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I think that is beautiful. And yes, I'm very excited and hopefully, excited to help, craft whatever you guys come up with. With that said, you have to service people.
Yeah.
And so, Cheryl, we're going to bounce over to you. So when we're looking at art therapy and we're talking about this concept of expression art in order to get out certain struggles or emotional shutting down, when you're working with someone who has had, maybe not handicapped, but definitely has had some type of trauma.
Yeah.
What's your go-to way of relaxing that individual so that they can be expressive on a canvas or a paper or whatever?
It's funny because I actually say I don't know how you address trauma without art therapy.
Yeah.
Because, and I don't know how familiar you are with polyvagal theory.
None.
But it's kind of an experimental theory. Neuroscience is still not sure if, there's some things that aren't lining quite up. Yeah. But what I love about it is it's really exploring how trauma affects us physiologically.
That part I know. But go ahead.
So one of the things, to make it really brief, that happens is when somebody experiences trauma, right, their fight or flight system gets engaged.
Correct.
And it gets activated much more easily. And before a person can address that trauma and really think about it and learn the behaviors, they have to be able to self-regulate.
Right.
And that's the part that sometimes gets disconnected. It's like when a kid that's been through a lot, sometimes they get into trouble and someone says, better. Yeah, they know better, but they can't access that knowledge.
Right.
And so what is great about art is before we even start exploring and looking into the meaning, we're using the art process to regulate because it's sensory. And sensory can help us get back into our bodies and help ground us. And so just the act of making art is a tool that people can use for that. And so we usually start there.
And selfishly, I was thinking about my son when you were talking, because we have a difficulty in getting him to open up or getting him to actually see certain things. But we do find out, and, popped in my head when you were talking, getting more on the expressive side.
Yeah.
So when you're working with a client, or when you're working and you recognize that this individual is sort of closed off and, sort of, one of the more stereotypical ways of individuals that are suffering from trauma, they have a very rigid presentation at times when they become triggered. When you're working with an individual, and like you said, you have to allow them to become expressive, which in some terms, you may be talking about something that can be triggering to them.
Yes.
What's your go-to medium? So when we're talking about art, what are we talking about? Are we just talking about pen and paper? Are we talking about pastels and, liquid paint? What are we talking about?
Everything. So I'm actually a fiber artist. Okay. So I do a lot with yarn and fabric, But art therapists kind of use every tool in the toolbox. They kind of need to know a little bit about every media.
Okay.
So we do everything from pen and paper to ceramics to fiber to everything. And it really is about, and this is where that training comes in, knowing the right media to use in the moment.
Gotcha.
And so you could give me a case study and I could look and say, I have to kind of see, I have to look at more than that to know what the right media choice is. For some people, it may be one thing, and it's really about reading the moment.
Something else.
Yeah.
And so, Michelle, you got being an individual that has to account for this, right? So even in the nonprofit sector, you have to be able to explain what this so you have to explain what this individual is doing, right? So you have to give a report of the beginning, the middle, and the results. Being from your side, right? You have to look at the results, not for the betterment of, simply for the betterment to help other people to continue it on. When you hear Cheryl talk about, the things that she's doing with clients, how does that register with you as it relates to those individuals when you write a grant or those individuals when you apply for certain things? How does that register for you on that end? How do you make it into sense?
Yeah. And that's a very difficult thing to do when you're trying to take something that's not quantifiable and turning it into data points that a funder could look at and say, oh, well, you're making progress to that. Well, how do you measure progress for somebody who's, dealt with trauma and they feel slightly happier today than they did, 3 days ago? Right. That's something that you can't really measure. So what we've actually done is we have documentation we do at the beginning of each session. And then for our 10-week programs, we'll check in mid-cycle, and then at the end, we'll measure their progress and we'll compare them. Yeah. And so we add like a numeric figure to that. So if they met all their goals, they'd get like a 5 that gets tallied among, a certain number of objectives. So then we take that data and turn them into percentage points where we could say, 30% of people that have come through this program that have experienced this trauma or experienced, feeling unmotivated or whatever, they've resulted in an increase with their own metrics towards that end. Yeah. The other thing that we do is we track attendance, because if somebody is not coming back, then chances are they're not actually working towards their therapy. And we do this with our more community partners too. Like if they have individuals that we can't get such fine details on, whether it's like a library program or something like that, we'll keep track of how many people are coming in and out to see how successful that is as a community component. Okay.
So we're going to take a quick break, real quick. But what I do want on the other side, so we're going to talk a little bit. I want to know or let people know how they can connect with you, because what I don't want to do is just minimize this as someone who is struggling with something such as handicap or something major, right? Because a lot of times in mental health, people truly believe, oh, I'm good. That's not that big. When in reality, we got to use this thing just like preventative medicine, right? You go to the doctor, you go to the dentist, same difference. So we're going to go out on a quick break. This is WOVU 95.9 FM, Unapologetically Strong, and we'll see you in a minute. Welcome back to Unapologetically Strong. We have the art therapy crew in here. We got Michelle and we got Cheryl. So on the other side, we were talking about this concept, and we were during break was like breaking the stigma. Yeah. Like, because when we think about mental health, period, it's stigmatized. But truly, when we're looking at this concept of art therapy, which is new and different, it's not really new. Let's be perfectly candid, but just a different way of dealing with certain mental health struggles. How do you get the individual that is not simply struggling, but also sees something when it relates to attention issues such as ADHD or, some low level or situational anxiety? How do you connect to those individuals and also normalize art therapy for those individuals, as well as someone such as myself is attempting to normalize therapy for those same individuals?
Yeah. So one of the things that I really want to say about our community art therapy programs is it's open to anybody.
Mhm.
And one of the things that's really unique about the program is we are not grouping people based on their need or a diagnosis.
Right.
Everyone can come.
Okay.
And we may direct people based on what we think might be a better fit for them.
Mhm.
But it's pretty special because you have people that have different needs that are coming together over a shared passion for art.
Gotcha.
So you might have somebody that is retired and wants to socialize. You may have a working professional that needs a little bit of self-care time. You may have somebody with a serious mental illness like schizophrenia.
Right.
And you may have somebody with a developmental disability and somebody with a physical disability all in the same space together.
Okay.
And the reason that we do it that way is because it does actually help break the stigma.
Mhm.
Because sometimes if somebody has a certain walk of life, they may not have been exposed to somebody.
Right.
And so it helps people learn about each other. And sometimes you have somebody come in and go, oh, I don't know if I fit in here, or I don't know if this is for me. But over that time and over that 10 weeks, they build these beautiful relationships. And I have had people come to me and say, I wasn't sure. I was really nervous about working in the same group as somebody that has X or has this. And I'm so glad I did because I learned so much and they taught me so much.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the ways that we work to break barriers is to say, you come for any reason.
Mhm.
You don't need to have a serious diagnosis. You just want to use art for wellness. Come.
Yeah, that's the part. The concept that, all hell has to break loose in order for me to see someone in order to help us. But this is something that we have to operationalize. And so,
Yeah.
Michelle, you have to operationalize this. So when, one of the downfalls, so one of the positive things about what's going on in the art therapy or even with the mental health field is that one is more awareness. And just recently, government issued insurances has just decided to pay us more, which is kind of interesting. Right. I saw your face. With that said, I think one of the downfalls is when you accept a certain insurance company, you are beholden to the way that they, I hate to use this word, critique you. Well, I was going to say judge, but critique you for payment. So looking at it from that standpoint, it's beautiful that you get a chance to create a different system for monetary. But what comes with that is a pain point such as clinic notes. How have you wrapped your head around that now?
Well, when I said I was scared, this is part of it.
Yeah.
Is the fact that, we're really worried about our community art therapy program, which is really the base of what we do in the community. That's our representation. That's how we serve our mission.
Right. That means
And-
going to someplace.
Well, they actually come to us at our location.
Okay. Gotcha.
And so it's the one that's open to anybody.
Yes.
And my concern, or our concern rather, was now that the insurance is a potential to fund this, the scrutiny is going to be a lot greater. And how are they going to be judging, when we are doing a program and we're giving a discount to somebody who doesn't have insurance? Is there going to be like an all or nothing type of a mentality when it comes to providing services, and what people are going to get lost in the gaps that are uninsured or underinsured? So that's a big fear, I think, for us as far as our mission goes. And we really haven't gotten our head around it yet until we actually see what the I guess the insurance board and the state is going to do.
The other part, let me just give some numbers because people really don't understand insurances. And so I'm going to give some numbers and I'm going to bounce it over to you guys just to expound on it. So if you accept all of the insurances, all the major insurances, the average billable per hour that comes out is roughly $92. May go up to 95 now. So in other words, we receive on average, if you accept for mental health services, we will receive back an average of less than $100, 90 some dollars, right? So that's one. With that said, each insurance company bills us differently. For example, so a major Ohio company pays us right now at roughly $110. Another company for the exact same services pays us $68. And so when we're looking at quantifying, it's the same thing, right? It's the same exact client, the same exact services. Now that you're going into this field, you're throwing your hand in here for a good reason. right? For a good reason. This is what you're going to have to deal with. You're giving the exact same service, and that code is psychotherapy, but there's a different pay for group therapy, what you talked about. So when you wrap your head around this, or what are your thoughts about that concept? It's the same therapist, but the only thing that's different is the insurance that the client carries.
Yeah, I don't know if we're far enough along to really internalize that, but I think for us, the biggest concern is if we were to, let's say they have insurance and it only pays that amount of money and there's a balance left, is there, is there a penalty for like forgiving that? Will that reduce the overall amount that they give us? Because, we've done things where if somebody's having a medical crisis, we'll work with the people to make sure that they can stay on. We don't like to turn people away. So my biggest concern is anything with the insurance, is it going to create an environment because the strictness of the rules where we have to turn people away that are uninsured or underinsured. Because, those are the people that get lost in the cracks. I mean, if you have insurance, we would like you to come to us, but you have other options, and so for us, it's really, we want to maintain that community aspect where anybody off the street who's like, I'm struggling, I need just somebody to give me a helping hand here to make me make sense of what's going on, that I have a place to go and I don't have to worry about insurance. And so I think with our funding model, we're able to kind of absorb that. The insurance, I'm not really sure like how funders will look differently at that. Well, now that you're taking insurance,
what it looks
are
like.
are we going to give you less money? So that is a concern, that it's a lot, I think, of uncertainty. That is just, it's just kind of difficult to kind of internalize.
Before I bounce over to you, what I will say, because I do this, and I also, do master classes on this as well. What I will say is there's a difference between for-profit and nonprofit. And I think, and this is just my own personal opinion, so it doesn't really matter. I believe by you being a nonprofit, you'll get a sort of duality once all this happens. And what I've noticed is that nonprofits that understand structure and understand the business side service their clients in a better way. So I would say that you have that versus a for-profit that just, you out there in the wild. What were you about to say, Cheryl?
Well, I was going to say real quick, I feel like that price differential we kind of work within already because we have a sliding scale. But when you're talking about numbers, I think another important thing to call out is that reimbursement, it only happens for the time in session. So everything that the therapist is doing out, documentation, appointments, all
2 hours afterwards, before and after.
That price has to cover that. And for art therapists, we also have to prep the materials, set up the space, clean up. And I'm not saying that that's more work than what a counselor does, but that also will have to come out of that.
That's just realistic.
It's just,
and that's the other part. So what I would like for you not to do is apologize. So don't do that because that's just real. And so the idea is we have to do this in order for us as providers to give the greatest care. Let's just be real. Burnout it's two types of burnouts in the mental health field, right? Two types. Let's be perfectly honest. Professional burnout that's doing the job. And financial burnout that's getting paid to do the job. Those two burnouts are the reason why people leave the profession. And it's not like when we do leave a community mental health agency, it isn't like you look at somebody in a very high esteem. What you're saying is that individual is going for money. But in reality, we have two burnouts. Professional burnout because this job is difficult, but you sign up for that, right? And financial burnout, you don't sign up for that. And I think that's the part where I believe if anyone is listening and you got some pull, you need to understand in order for us as clinicians to do the very best job, we have to be viewed as vital and essential as a dentist, as a doctor, as a nurse. And it's not about money. It's about quality of care and value that we're giving our clients. So we got a couple minutes left. What I want to do is just close out a little bit and just give a little, some contact information of how individuals can reach you, can see you, can do whatever. So who wants to go first? Who got the numbers? Go for it.
Well, you can always reach us at 216-791.
9303. We did it together.
It's all good. It's all good.
Boy. And then if you're more comfortable with email, you can do info@arttherapy.com. arttherapystudio.org.
All right. So we're going to go out. Thank you guys for spending time with me. Thank you guys for being with me. We're going to do this again one day?
Yeah,
Definitely.
Right.
Thanks
Well,
for
you-
having us.
No problem. This is Unapologetically Strong with Eric. We will see each other next week.